Hello, I'm Woodrow Wilcox. With me today is Cy Huerter. He's been my friend for years. I want to let you know a few things about Cy Huerter. He's the former president of the Lake County Right to Life organization, but he also ran for Congress. He ran against an incumbent Democrat who was pro-abortion, and he ran as a pro-life Democrat, and that was years ago. I think he's changed to the Republican Party, and I want to find out why. Cy, welcome.
Well, thank you, Woody. It's good to be here, and it's always good to be with you. And yes, I had many years as a Democrat in Gary, and carried on for probably better than 30 years as a Democrat. But getting ready to retire from the Navy in 1992, I actually, at the behest of my enlisted combat aircrew gentleman, opted to run against Pete Visklowski, the long-term Democrat there, and primarily at the behest of my enlisted fellows, who says, "Well, Mr. Huerter, you've been complaining about Congress all these years. We've been flying with you, so we expect to see your name on the ballot." So that's what I did. I actually ran against Pete Visklowski 4 times as a pro-life Democrat, and primarily not so much as at the right to life issue, but my main concern was the economic downturn here in Northwest Indiana from 92 through almost 2000. And the problem was that whenever here, as what we call military at choke point, there should be just top economic opportunities here in Northwest Indiana. So anyway, I did challenge him and had a lot of fun doing it. I talked to League of Women Voters to actually make Pete sit down with me in Channel 56 out in Maryville there for our debates. And so consequently, I would answer the ladies' questions. I had 2 minutes of my time, answer their question in about 30 seconds, and take the rest of my time to just hammer Pete on being such a wimp on everything. Because a seat in Congress really is one of the most important jobs in the country, has been since day one, and continues to be an important job. Primarily reason for that is, according to the Constitution, every penny of spending, federal spending, has to be initiated in the House of Representatives. So that's called having the strings to the money bag. So people worry about the Senate, they worry about the president, they worry about the courts. But if you can control all of their money to pay themselves and their staffs and all that sort of stuff, then if you work your cards right, you should really be in control of the money and the government and what that's spent on and what's done. And Pete just wasn't doing that. And then eventually I did switch over to a Republican and did run 3 more times as a Republican for Congress, and then twice more for state representative for my area there, including Highland and part of Hamland and part of Gary.
So you're the kind of guy that does what he can for what he believes in and stands firmly for it, right?
Well, that's what you learn in the military.
Okay. And when did you become president of the Lake County Right to Life organization?
Golly, that was probably in about 2000.
2000, and how long were you the president?
Well, I was president for 4 years before I turned it over to a much better man.
Okay. Well, I want to talk about, it seems like a lot of Democrats have been switching over to the Republican Party. Over the years, I've met some people who would do that. I haven't met that many Republicans that switched to the Democrat Party. Can you think of anyone that you know personally switched from the Democrat to the Republican Party for either reasons that are similar to the one you did or different ones?
Well, actually, there's too many of them to actually count, especially right now. I think they're coming over in flocks and herds.
Okay.
So, and for good reason. Ronald Reagan used the excuse when they asked him why he was going from being a Democrat to a Republican. And he says, well, the party left me. I didn't leave them. And so I can, if that was good for Ronnie Reagan, I can use the same quote.
Okay, I want to talk about a few people that I know that switched from Democrat to Republican. One was a friend of mine, James Treat, and he grew up in Chicago. He told me he wanted to join the Democratic organization so he could work his way up. But the first time he worked the polls with his precinct committeeman, the precinct committeeman came out to him and said, "The police are coming, hold them off." "Why are the police coming?" "Somebody complained about me throwing ballots out the window." And so my friend James Street is a much more principled man than his committeeman. And when the police arrived, he said, "Right this way, gentlemen." I have another friend who's a former elected Democratic Party precinct committeeman who was in Porter County, Indiana. He's since moved out to a western state. And he told me that he switched to the Republican Party because the Democrats out there were so radical. They were woke, and he couldn't stand them. So he switched to the Republican Party. And by the way, while he was here in Porter County, he had a cable TV show, a public access cable TV show, and he caught the Democrat mayor of Portage, Indiana, pulling up signs of his opponent, yard signs. He caught him on video, and he ran that video on the public access cable channel. And as a result, the Democratic mayor of Portage was not reelected. So my friend was a elected Democratic Party precinct committeeman, but he had principles. It was unfair for the mayor of Portage to pull up yard signs of his opponent. And that just irked my friend, and his name was Gordon. I'm not going to say his last name because he says out where he is now, the Democrats are all woke, and he doesn't want to hurt his employment. Also, while I was a Democrat precinct committeeman, the leading Republican in my precinct was Mr. Richard Luna. And Mr. Richard Luna, Republican, when we got to know each other and we had conversations, he was a Democrat originally. In 1960, he was in the marching unit for the presidential inauguration for John F. Kennedy's inauguration. His unit was chosen to march in that inauguration parade. And he told me he loved John F. Kennedy and the things he stood for, so he was a Democrat. But he said, then the Democrat Party changed and he couldn't stand it anymore, and so he went to be a Republican. But Richard Luna, former Democrat who worked with me in my precinct as a Republican, gave me one of the greatest compliments I've ever had. He told me that after he got to know me, he said, I reminded him of John F. Kennedy.
Oh, wow.
That's a really nice compliment. So I think people in the Democratic Party, a lot of them are leaving because we just have radical leaders in the Democratic Party. Now, I'm still in the Democratic Party because I hope to bring them back to sense.
Fat chance of that.
Well, anyway, there's a way you can tell who's leading the pack, and that is there's an old saying, he who has the gold makes the rules.
Absolutely.
It seems to me
That's the golden rule, isn't it, Woody?
well, not the one I've heard about in the Bible.
Okay.
Anyway, I know that Newsmax in 2008 had a great story about how many foreigners or people in foreign countries were giving to the Obama campaign, but they were using fake American names like Daisy Duck, Donald Duck, Minnie Mouse, and other cartoon characters. And they were pouring lots of money into the Obama campaign. So that's an example of, it seems to me like it probably was foreigners pouring money into the Obama campaign.
I think it still is, Woody.
Well, I want to tell you about what I experienced in the year 2000. I was living in Las Vegas, and I was between jobs, so I looked for something to get as a job, and I found a position as a survey taker, a telephone survey taker in Las Vegas. I'd call all over the country, and I'd say to people, hi there, I'd like to take a survey. Do you have a few minutes to stay on the phone with me? And the survey was run by environmental groups. There were environmental groups there. I understand they were based in the Washington, D.C. area, but they had a public relations firm in Denver, and then we worked in Las Vegas. Now, you know, I don't try to stir trouble at my employer's place. And the survey ended up to be 40 minutes long, And I realized this survey is trying to condition people to confuse national parks and national forests. And it's trying to teach them that we should be more environmentally inclined and that maybe the Paris Accord should be confirmed. Now, the Paris Accord would have put America behind a real mountain of problems. It would have cut down our emissions and so forth. We're already cutting down emissions, but it would leave China and India free.
Absolutely.
To emit all the emissions that they want. And that's what they've been doing. But then one day, I overheard two supervisors talk to one another, and one of the supervisors said, tonight, I've got to send a report to the Chinese. And the Chinese they were talking about were in Canada.
Wow.
And that bothered me. I'm taking surveys of American citizens and the American citizens' names, phone numbers, address, and the responses to the survey were going to be sent to Chinese in Canada. So I came in the next day and said, thank you very much. I found another job, so I won't be working here today. Thank you very much. I didn't have another job, but it just irked me that I was participating in what I thought was some kind of Chinese intelligence operation. I didn't like it because, if you send a report to somebody, that means the other person is over you in some supervisor fashion.
Sure.
Probably because they're helping pay your bill. So I quit that job. And then in 2008, when I was a reporter covering the elections, you and I actually traveled around to different precincts. You were a driver for various people that were wanting to report, and I was a reporter. Now, you and I saw each other at one precinct polling place. Actually, it was 3 precincts, but the polling place was for 3 precincts. And while I was inside trying to cover some news, I came out and you had some information for me, didn't you?
Oh, absolutely did.
Would you please share that with these people?
Well, being a driver and what we would do is while you were in taking care of your business inside, naturally what I would do was talk to any of the ones who were, what they call plugging, which is passing out information for the candidate. Now, I believe that was 2008, was it not?
Yes, it was 2008. Yeah, November 2008.
2008. And actually, I was a candidate for state representative that same year. And after I had gone around to all my precincts and made sure they were all working right, I went back to Republican headquarters. And at that point in time, the reason why we got involved in it is if there were complaints about certain precincts, then we would be sent out to check it out.
Yeah, I had several drivers that day that were taking me around to different precincts.
Right.
But it happened that you and I were at the same precinct polling place on that day.
Well, it worked out that way. The reason why I went over there is because having lived in Gary for 9 years, I knew exactly where that precinct was and was able to make it there without a problem. So anyway, I would have to be talking to this nice-looking fellow. He looked like he was probably 40 years old, actually in a suit and tie, out there in front of a precinct in Gary plugging for candidate Obama. And I thought that was curious. So I says, well, hey, you're out here plugging for Obama. Oh, you're just pretty nice for this job. I says, what do you do? And he says, well, I'm an attorney and I actually have my own business. Well, where's your business? Oh, my business is in Shanghai, China. I said, oh, wow. Shanghai, China. And it says, well, what are you doing for the campaign? And he says, well, I'm working with finance for the Obama campaign. And I says, oh, wow. And I says, I've heard it said that a person could take a large chunk of money and what you could do is break it down into small contributions, say under $100. And like Woodrow had just said there, maybe put fake names on it or whatever, so that you get maybe 1 million fake names and, or 10,000 fake names under $100. And then what you do is you put that in because over $100, then they had to report that on their financial reports. So anyway, and I says, I had heard about that. I says, is there anything that possible about that? And he just smiled and changed the topic into something else. And we had our interview on that subject, how many years ago? 10 years? Well, right afterwards, right?
Well, yeah, shortly after when you told me that, then you got his card.
Right.
And I came to your home and we discussed it, and I shot that card and then put it on YouTube.
Right. And I've been able to recall that video many, many times, Woody, and recently in the last year or so, in fact, I tried to recall it up here again today, and that thing isn't available on your website anymore.
Isn't that amazing?
I can't imagine why that would be.
Well, I want to tell you, are you through? Because I got a comment about the man you met and what he was doing and what I suspect he was really doing.
Oh, I wish I had my old lie detector machine, Woody. I would have loved to have plugged him in there. That would have probably been about a 5-minute test, and I think we would have had to call the Gary police and put the guy in handcuffs.
Well, I'm trying to do that, but I'm saying that, if an American